We are trying a new thing to recording here, going live on YouTube. Welcome to the Between Two Wheels podcast. This is Tyler Janke, episode 73. We're doing stage by stage. I don't know if we'll do every stage, but we're going to be doing multiple stages of the 2018 Tour de France. Today, stage one. So we had quite an interesting development, and there's a lot of podcasts out there. There's a lot of them doing stages of the tour, and I thought what we can try to do is maybe we'll try it with Facebook Live instead of YouTube Live, but get your input as we talk about it. That way you can actually join in some of the conversation, give me your input. You maybe be part of the hosting here, since Curt and Chris aren't here with me today, and they've kind of, I don't know if they're disillusioned with cycling, definitely with the Tour de France. But anyway, this is what we have today. Stage one, we had stage one, 201 kilometers from Noirmoutier to Fontenay-le-Comte. And 201 kilometers, there's a sprint spot at 119.5 point, another Cat 4 climb, or a Cat 4 climb at the 173 kilometer point, a bonus point sprint just 13 kilometers from the finish. So these bonus points and these the green jersey sprints, they're going to be just a little bit different. So they're having the green jersey sprint spots, which they take like 15 deep on points, but then they're having bonus points during the stage, giving the riders out there a chance to get 3, 2, and 1 or more. Today it was 3, 2, and 1 actual bonus points. Now it didn't come into play for the overall, as we'll see. So stage one, typically you get a winner and you get the overall jersey as well. So today, very flat. They were starting up on the coast. About half of the race they're going to be going down the coast, kind of southeast, and then about the 119 kilometer point heading west over to the finish. It was supposed to be possible wins. This is definitely one of those sections in the Vendée region, especially along the coast. You never know what you're going to have there, so thinking is maybe you're going to get some action that way. However, the race turned into a breakaway from kilometer 0, nothing happening until about 11k to go, then carnage hits till the finish, and we're going to talk about all of that coming up. Okay, so the profile was very flat. Should be a sprinter's day, as we indicated. Was it? Yes, actually it was. But there are some highlights. From kilometer 0 point, you had 3 Continental riders, and it almost looked like they did this in like a coordinated attack. Boom, boom, boom. You had Froome, Samsek, Wanty Group Gobert, and Direct Energy. So you had Kevin Ledenois of Fortuneo Samsek, Jan Alfredo of Wanty Group Gobert, and Jerome Cousins of Direct Energy. This is when the kilometer 0 flag hit. These guys took up the road, and they were about 3:30, I think, was their lead at the time, but nothing other than that. So prior to that, we just had, well, not prior to that, but from there to the finish, nothing's really happening. However, there were sprint points, bonus points, and KOMs to deal with. First of all, we had the sprint. At the sprint spot, Cousins leads in Ledenois and Alfredo through the intermediate, and he ends up getting the sprint. So from behind, though, you're going to have the green jersey start to shake up a little bit. So from there, you had Fernando Gaviria pointing things to come. Andre Geipel, Arnaud Demar, Bodnar, Cavendish, Rigoberto Urán mixes it up with Christoph, Kittel, Ricchesi, Zabel, Berghardt, and I think Berghardt took the 15th spot, the last spot they would have points, from his own teammate Sagan. So I don't know if that was very good. Anyway, 29k in. Well, then right after that, there was also a wreck, and it took down Lawson Craddock of the United States. We'll talk a little bit more about him coming up, but basically he went down, he was injured, he kept coming in back and forth. He'd get back onto the group, and then he'd kind of get popped off again. And it was around that KOM spot. It looked like his shoulder was hurt, so he was having trouble actually holding onto the bars, and so climbing was a little difficult. And even though this KOM wasn't like they're going full out, he came off on that spot. So he had 29 kilometers left to go, so he ends up coming in on his own. But when I say on his own, there was still action around him, and I'll get to that in a second. All right, so the kilometer, 28, 29 kilometers to go. The 3 break guys hit the climb. It's 4 category. The Côte de Vix, 700 meters at 4.2%. And they had to leave about 45 seconds at that point. Okay, then they cross over the KOM. Kevin Ledenois of Samsic, Fortunato Samsic, wins that. So he will be in the mountain jersey tomorrow. He's the only one of these group that was able to get anything out of there. Then we have the bonus sprint, and that comes about 15K, I think, from the finish. And Jerome Cousins wins that over Alfredo. And Oliver Nason had been driving, trying to catch up to these 3. And I don't know if it was his point of, I'm going to get this bonus sprint and then see what I can do in the final. But he doesn't quite catch. As you can see, one of the guys came off, so it was just Cousins and Alfredo. And then Nason comes in, and he doesn't end up catching him. And then as the group basically is getting caught, the break, the 2 guys out front, that's when the carnage all happens. It all starts around the 11 kilometer to go point. The break's being reeled in. These 2 guys are giving each other fist bumps. If you don't know what fist bump is, you can Google that. Just don't use the Urban Dictionary version of that. But anyway, these guys are getting caught. It's all hell breaking loose, and there's a wreck in the middle of the field. Arnaud Demar goes down for Groupama. Adam Yates, Pierre Latour, Richie Porte. And the teams up front aren't really driving it too hard, but they're still up there. There's Quick Steps on the front, Dimension Data, Lotto Soudal. And they're just kind of rolling, and there's a little bit of a gap. You think, okay, well, these guys about 10, 11K, they should be able to get back on, and they're having some trouble doing so. 6 kilometer point, the road narrows in again. There's a lot of narrowing roads here with some banners and barriers up there. Egan Bernal goes over the handlebars on the side of the road. He goes down, he gets up, he's trying to catch back. The sprint teams almost look like they're kind of starting to ramp it just a little bit more. The break is still trying to come back. You see Pierre Latour weaving through traffic. He's trying to make it back. AGTR rider, I guess he's hopes for the overall, so he's kind of in the mix with all that. And it looks like he's a little crazy about how he's doing it too, weaving through the cars. Now you have all this carnage coming back. You have also riders from Quick Step and some of these other teams that are peeling off the front of doing their work, and they're kind of done, and Latour is getting caught up in the middle of this. 6K to go, like I said, Bernal goes down, then 5K to go. We basically have another thing coming on race radio, and it says, hey, Froome, shoot. C-H-U-T-E, like he's down the chute. Basically, he fell. And you can see this on, there's some good videos out there. I actually retweeted it on our Between Two Wheels podcast Twitter from the tour. Must be from Velon. It's another bike right behind him. And look, Froome must have hit his race weight because he got flicked off, and it was Kittel from Katusha kind of comes into him from a rider of Dimension Data. It looked like had kind of pushed on him. And he gets he gets flicked over the side of the road into the ditch. He misses a post. I don't know if it was an inflatable or if it was a hard one, but he just barely misses this, goes down. So now his team comes back, and they're going to try to dig him up. 3.4K to go. Quintana pulls over on the side of the road. He had made the front split, and he pulls over to, I guess he broke both tires. At the time, and it was on Twitter and other places, people were basically asking, hey, why didn't he 400 meters, he needed to just roll through to the 3 kilometers, because at 3 kilometers to go, you have safe haven, and if you have an accident or flat within 3K, you basically get the same time as the group you're in, and he's in the front group. He had ditched Froome behind now, ditched Porte, Adams, so he was looking pretty good, but the point was he actually broke both wheels, so he was getting a wheel change, and the wheel change looked bad. It was from neutral support, like it was reminiscent of Froome, in 2016 at Ventoux, where he's getting the bike, it's slow, it's confusing, and Nairo's standing there as he lets basically Froome's group just go by, and he's on the radio. A catastrophic day for him as well. He almost made the 3 kilometer point, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So when Froome went down, now you see the urgency at the front group, plus their 3K to go, so it all mixes in with the sprinters, and you have Quick Step just coming to the front and lining it out. And at that point, when the group, so Froome gets in with the Porte group, he's chasing. Nairo's not quite making it there, so he's behind that. I'm not sure if Bernal, I don't think Bernal made it either, so he's back even further, and it's scattered across the road. Then Quick Step hits the front, and they drill it, and then Gaviria uses his team to perfection, comes around the wind, hits the wind about 200 meters, and holds it off for the win over Sagan. One of the guys I talked about before, Groenewegen, he looked to be too far back, maybe 15, 10 back, and when the sprint started, he had got himself moved up, but he actually looked pretty good. So we go over the results now. So he had Gaviria coming in through for the win today, and these are also the GC times here. Peter Sagan, second place. It's Marcel Kittel in third, Christophe in fourth, Christophe Laporte in fifth, Dylan Groenewegen, Michael Matthews, Degenkolb, and then that big time sprinter Jacob Fuglsang and Rafael Majka. They got mixed in, because that's what happens. You have other teams, it's a diminished group, and some of these GC guys are able to hit the front and hold that front group, and so and there's some splitting in there right around, and I'm surprised they didn't give them they gave them all the same time for the top 50-60 riders or so. So let's just go over an overview of how the GC riders fared on the day, because you had some of these guys missed out and they lost some decent time. So let's just break that down. Well, Gaviria, he won, so we're not going to give him, but he's in yellow for tomorrow. Jacob Fuglsang, as I mentioned, was 9th, so he's 9th overall as well, same time. Rafael Majka, same time. Vincenzo Nibali made the split, same time. Geraint Thomas made the split, same time. Tom Dumoulin, Mikel Landa, Romain Bardet, Alejandro Valverde, Dan Martin. And I will also mention Dan Martin at 52nd, but I also mentioned there are only 2 BMC riders that made that front split, TJ Van Garderen, American, and Greg Van Avermaet. So they did not drop back to help Richie Porte. And I know TJ is the protected, I don't know if he's protected, but he's the super domestique for Porte this year. And he did not drop back. He's a strong engine himself, so is Van Avermaet. So I guess you can't bring everybody back, but when your guy is that close, and I'll go back to this coming here in a little bit. Let's keep breaking down. So then you have the time gaps. You have Richie Porte, BMC at 51 seconds. And I think most of this was actually lost in about the last 1 to 2K because that sprint train was hauling. Adam Yates, Chris Froome, they all got the same time. Nairo Quintana, he loses 1:15, so he loses an additional 25 seconds there to Froome, and then Egan Bernal at the same as well. So how'd the Americans fare today? You had, like I said, TJ Van Garderen, Taylor Phinney, both the same time as the winner. They were made that front group at 55 and 56th place respectively. Chad Haga loses 1:30. It's no big deal. He's a helper. Ian Boswell. So Ian Boswell is 1:53 at 2:44 back. I don't know if he had problems today or his role is just different than kind of what some of us had thought. Now it's his first tour, so there's probably not a lot expected on him. But he's a little bit older. He's been with Sky. Maybe he's expected to do more. So I was kind of surprised at that loss, and then Lawson Craddock 7:50 back. Okay, some things that make you go, So, well, let me talk before we do that real quick. Lawson Craddock. So he loses 7:50. The word on the street, well, what he had done in an interview, he said there was X-rays. He actually had slightly fractured his scapula. So he was actually in a lot of pain today. His face was banged up. I love things online, tweet comparisons of World Cup soccer players who's down holding his ankle, getting carted off, and he probably wasn't even kicked. And then you have, Lawson Craddock for 80 kilometers with a fractured shoulder, bloodied face, holding on. And that's just the way cycling is. So, and by the way, I haven't seen any of the World Cup, so I'm glad to pronounce that. Okay, things that make you go, Nairo broke both wheels also, just outside the 3 kilometer point. And, there's some speculation or, hey, why didn't he be able to do this? And my first thought is, yeah, exactly that. Maybe it's just the thought of he's not quite the rider that's on top of the thinking of here's what I've got to do in these situations. It reminds me of like crit racing where if there's a wreck, you take that free lap, and not a lot of riders do that. Maybe they don't always know that they can, but they can. And that's part of the rules. You get hung up on a crit and a wreck, you can do that. And maybe, I say all this, and then you read further, and he's like basically saying, look, it was not even possible. These wheels were both broken, but it does make me think of one other thing. Is you have a team like Movistar with 3 big riders coming in there: Landa, Nairo Quintana, and Alejandro Valverde. And Valverde himself, well, both of those guys, when you have all 3 of them, and you have your team then split up. So, Chris Froome everyone's just all in for Chris Froome. So with Chris Froome, everyone, certain riders are dropping back. They have that coordinated. But how do you split those roles up when you have 3 guys to basically take and protect the protected guys? So you have 8 guys, you take 3 out. Now you've got 5, 1 or so each. Maybe if they had a different way that they were doing this and not have 2 or not have 3, it would have been better served. Okay, similar on that, TJ and Greg Van Avermaet were the only 2 BMC riders in the top group. They didn't drop back. It reminded me of 2016 tour when Richie was first riding with BMC. I think it was stage 2, and he gets a flat tire in the last 5K. His whole team's around him, but no one stops, and he loses a minute 45. That minute 45, he ends up 5th overall, and that minute 45 would have put him in 2nd place. So you never know how these things work out, and that happened to him, poor thing, that year. We'll see how this one works out for him overall. Now it's very, very early, so was that. Okay, Froome crashes day 1, similar to his crash. Not similar, but he had a similar issue that he did at the Giro, where he crashed in the time trial. This wreck, though, and like I mentioned, if you go back and look at the tweets, and there's this video that the crash, while it looks kind of horrific at the time, I think it was softer than what he did. That crash he did in the Giro, even though it's on the TT, it was a full impact on his side, may have made a bigger difference than what you see here today. So a little bit softer. But obviously reminiscent. He's not starting out the tour and there's, like I said, Chris and Curt may be feeling a little lackluster with cycling right now in the tour, and so maybe they will kind of make a comeback of watching this race if Froome has a lot of trouble. And starting out with an injury, it bodes well for their prospects. So hopefully we'll get them back. Okay, what's coming up in the next few stages here? Stage 2 tomorrow, Sunday, June 8th, 182.5 kilometers from Morion Saint-Germain to La Roche-sur-Yon. The route is it's kind of like a big counterclockwise loop, ending not too far from where they're starting. So, and it's flat. Let's talk about this. So the start in Saint-Germain, it's like a commune there. The La Roche-sur-Yon, it's also a commune in the Vendée department, which, by the way, you can see that on the side of the Direct Energy team. The Vendée, they're from that's their home region. This town was formerly named, changed in like 1804, I think, to Napoleonville, named after the little pint-sized tyrant when you moved the Vendée government over there. So just some interesting facts here. That's what we do for this. Tomorrow we have a Cat 4 KOM up the Côte de Poisage, 1 kilometer at 3.9%. So it doesn't sound, maybe it's like handing candy out to these guys, getting someone early on the jersey. We'll see if I'm sure. I think Le Danois won it today, so we'll see if he can hold that on for tomorrow. So it's only 28 kilometers in. He'll be fresh enough to take that on. Then there's a sprint at 132 kilometer point. And then there's the bonus sprint, just 20K from the finish. So it'll be interesting to see how they're doing with these bonus sprints and if they make anything up. So it's a fairly flat day tomorrow. You'll see some lumps early on. Like I said, there's that 1 kilometer climb. The finish, I looked at the finish, the last 5K. I mean, it goes from 50 meters in height up to around 80 in the middle, about 3 to go, and then pops up to 73 meters at the finish. So I don't think it should be much of a problem. Should be another sprinter day, of course, unless you see problems like you had today with the wrecks and the roads. And it will be interesting to see how some of these guys rebound from that. Plus, some of the GC guys are probably looking to save themselves just a little bit so that they can get rested for stage 3, which is the team time trial. All right, so I'm still working on this YouTube thing, and we'll see if I can get the chat activated to see if anybody is able to join in and make some comments why we do this. If not, then no big deal. But maybe leave me a note. Tell me if you think you would rather have this on Facebook Live or YouTube, because I'm going to try to join in and we'll give some brief things. Look, there's some cool stuff out there. People are doing all kinds of tours. I know there's other podcasts coming up. I think even in the local area, our friend Jason Graffath had mentioned one. So when I find more details about that, I'll let you guys know. More the merrier. I saw Floyd Landis, Dave Toll, Dave Zabriskie are doing one where they're commenting live from like the last 20 kilometers. And there was a good picture of them, and there was a guy, a wizard. So I don't have a wizard with me. Typically I have Chris and Curt, and I don't think any of them have any special powers. But anyway, those kind of things are out there. There's some great podcasts. Tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary from the start of this podcast. This is 73 episodes. We've done a full year now. One of the first things I think I started last year, I tried to look back, and I don't want to listen to it though. I don't think it was that good. But is what do you do for the tour to get all your your info? What do you listen to? What do you watch? And I'll just give a brief accounting of kind of what I do. See if I could bring this off the top of my head. And one of my favorite podcasts, which has always been, is the cycling podcast. I really like that, from Europe. And then you have Cycling Tips has one, Velo News has one. I'm not as up or care as much about those two. There's also an ITV. It's from Europe. It's a pretty good one. There's BBC also has a pretty good podcast. And then of course the Between Two Wheels podcast. Oh, and Lance Armstrong has his movement, or it was stages. Now it's the move. What was the move today, Lance? What was the move in the race? Anybody want to? The move was probably Gaviria hitting the front at 200k to go, or maybe it was Froome going head over heels. Lance, I wish he made an interesting comment on his podcast about not being able to buy your weight, because people had said about Froome, you put all this money in and hit to his non-analytical finding test, the salbutamol, and Lance like, look, you can't. I'm proof that you can't just put in a lot of money and end up, winning your way out of this and have the charges go away, because of his federal lawsuit. But Lance, that was your federal lawsuit against the U.S. government. It seems like to me, I'm trying to remember which year it was, 2099, somewhere in there, where he had a positive test at the Tour de Suisse. That went away because he, I think, bought out the UCI, and he did so with $100,000 loan to them, or purchase gift, so they got some anti-doping stuff. So Lance, not quite buying your thing. Anyway, thanks for joining us today. Once again, give us some comments and some feedback, and we'll be back for probably a stage 2 recap. And then this next week's a little hectic for me at work, but I'm going to get as many of these done as I can. Thanks for joining.